Snow swirled in the air in Munich last week as I navigated the icy pavements en route to a soirée to mark the launch of our new winter edition. In a coincidental wardrobe of black velvet, Confect's commercial director Rebecca Alderson and I skipped up the imposing stone steps of a villa which serves as the home and office of the wonderful artist, designer and architect Marie Einer, and immediately became enveloped in the warmth and mirth of the party within. It was an evening that sounded as good as it looked. Marie's Wilhelmine home was built by Rudolf Diesel, but today its panelled oak hallways, noble stucco and marble fireplaces are in conversation with a riot of her own installations. Wild, colourful, rebellious acoustic sculptures that gulped in the clatter of our chattering party. A giant cactus replica acts as a coat stand, and a ceramic parrot sits atop a plume of white feathers. The conversation leapt from reminiscences with old friends to bold new ideas and well-timed jokes and revelations. Guests milled around the space and lolled on Marie's petrol blue sofas, balancing glasses of wine on her forest green resin coffee tables. The sparkling company, who included a clutch of designers and the principal dancers from the Munich Opera House, really talked to each other. It got me thinking what the essence of a good winter party really is. There's something profoundly comforting about stepping into the hubbub of a room full of sparkling people when the icy winds rage outside. As candles flicker, the flames of human connection are fueled by interest, curiosity and a sense of delight. Each peripheral detail, from flowers to a gentle vinyl soundtrack, add to the cocoon. The best parties have their own momentum, one which taps into a hardwired human instinct to play, converse and connect as the light fades outside. Which brings me to this episode of Confect Corner, which, like the best soirée, flits from the serious artistic endeavours of artist Mandy El-Sayegh to the efforts of a Finnish forum for debate moving the needle for women, and to a review of an unputdownable Danish novel and a chat with its author. It will give you plenty to think and talk about as you make your way through a season of conversation and celebration. This is Confect Corner, and I'm your host, Sophie Grove.
There's a kind of thread that's always running through, which is, the body, like marginalized groups, and like this kind of fragmentation in the broader sense. So that can be like mentally or aesthetically, politically and historically.
What makes it different is that it brings together women from quite different kind of backgrounds and different kind of fields, but still on discussing the same themes that combines these different backgrounds.
I think we can feel the difference clearer. So if you suddenly have a book where somebody is really aware of what's around them, you know that it's a different mindset.
Welcome to Confect Corner. I'm your host, Sophie Grove, here in London, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined here in the studio by Julian Tobias and also from Zurich by our style director, Marcella Palek. Hello to you both.
Hi, Sophie and Marcella.
Hello, Sophie and Julian in London.
Marcella, so how is Zurich revving up for Christmas?
Zurich is really getting prepared for a huge Christmas. Markets are popping out in each quarter, and Lucy, the beautiful city lighting went on last Thursday, so it was a big party in Bahnhofstrasse, all shops open until late, and we are getting into the mood. And how is London?
It's twinkling a little bit, and I think it's really revving up too. Chiltern Street is particularly beautiful with all the Christmas trees along and these beautiful kind of like bowers of amazing floristry coming out.
So I always love the sparkle of London at Christmas, and my favourite places that I now have to sort of make a point of going, like the Burlington Arcade always has a beautiful Christmas display, Fortnum and Mason windows. I'm going to do a little sort of after dark tour of London to have a look at this seasonal offering of shop windows.
Columbia Road Market is one of my favourite pre-Christmas spaces because you really get that warmth, the kind of glühwein and
the holly.
Yeah. And the Christmas kind of wreaths and everything down there. I was there this weekend and I really felt some serious mirth. Well, as listeners will know, we like to start with a little show and tell. Gillian, where have you been? What have you been doing?
Well, this month I have a delicious discovery for you. I went to Dubai for Dubai Design Week, which actually was a really eye-opening surprise to see the incredible creativity in the region. And it's a strange city, so much of it was skyscrapers and 8-lane highways and traffic jams. But there is a wonderful new sort of arts district called Al Scaral Avenue, and that's rare for Dubai, but it does have bookstores and galleries and fashion boutiques. And the gem of this district is the most incredible bakery, which is actually called BKRY. It's a wonderful warehouse space, very cool, contemporary. It's an artisanal experimental bakery where the centre is like a glass box where they call the bake space, and you can see all the concoctions being made. They're very innovative with their flavours, and I just wanted to give you a little sampling of the menu to give you an idea of what they make. So there's pecan and salted caramel croissant, za'atar croissant, Tasmanian milk chocolate pain au chocolat, chocolate babka, which is brioche filled with chocolate and coffee syrup. And then they have roasted barley gâteau with caramelized miso. Now, these are just a few. And the textures and the ingredients are so fine. But what is wonderful is that this isn't just a place for expats or trendy young professionals. It really is these very local Emiratis in their black and their white robes with their children. It's become a meeting place as well. And I thought this place reflected more what I was seeing in Dubai Design Week, is that innovation, that cross-pollination, ideas, and they aspire to be the best with creativity. So it was very eye-opening, and I highly recommend a visit.
Well, lovely. I love the way a bakery can be a kind of fulcrum for community and delicious snacks. Marcella, tell us what you've been up to.
There have been numerous store openings in Zurich in the recent weeks, just perfect for discovering Christmas gifts. The Japanese boutique Haraizo, with collectibles and contemporary Japanese design, opened lately in Via di Con, just a few steps away from their delicious Aoki restaurant. One of my favorite fashion stores has just opened a second location not far from Bahnhofstrasse in the middle of Zurich. The renowned architects Caruso St. John, you might know them from London, designed the interior, their first retail project ever. Dramatic silver grey curtains form the backdrop for beloved labels, we all know them from Confect, such as Rier, Le Maire, Duchamp and Oralie. And I love the jewelry from Niccolo Pasqualetti, which he has as well. And yeah, some of them are on my Christmas wish list.
How amazing. And we know Caruso St. John, I mean, they did the Young V&A and such beautiful textures and actually colour, that sense of sort of something that looks almost antique when it's just been sort of installed. Give us a sense of the retail project and how you feel inside the space.
Yeah, it's very, very unique and special, because usually like retail concepts we know, like from Paris and Milan, are mostly white. But this one feels like silver grey, and some walls are, like you mentioned, color, are in a deep wine red. So a very, very special mood for mostly dark clothes. It's the winter collections now. So it feels very, very special for a fashion store.
And what's it called, Marcella?
Yeah, it's just called Opia number 2.
Oh, Opia. Of course.
Opia, you know the first one from Claudia de Saxo. She just opened one, which is not so off the beaten track, like in Kreis 4, but more in the center, in the middle of Zurich. You have to visit it when you're next time here.
Well, I certainly will. No, it's always just wonderful to see the buyer's eye, because we know Niccolo Pasqualetti and all these other brands, Rier, in issue 1 of Confect. But then it's amazing to see how that is kind of refracted through that taste of that one shopkeeper, that one buyer.
And combined with jewellery and lovely pieces that can really stand out with an outfit.
I mean, it's such a personal curation. I mean, Opia it's a small store. I've only seen the first one, but I think it's such a sense of discovery when you go, and there's always a surprise, which is the best thing about these independent shops that we love to champion so much in the magazine and on the show. So we'll hear more about them, hopefully, somewhere in our pages.
And Sophie, what do you have for us this time?
Well, I just got back from Munich, which was amazing, a little trip we did for a party to launch the issue, and it was an amazing gathering. I wanted to flag an exhibition that I saw last week, the Lee Miller retrospective, which opened at the Tate Britain last week, and it's just such an amazing show. We went with a whole group from the office, and it's really looking at her life as an artist, not so much as a muse that we've seen her. She was a photographer. She spanned this incredible sort of chunk of the 20th century, born at the very beginning of the 20th century. And then, so she was in the sort of late 20s in New York as a model. Then she was with Man Ray, working with him as an assistant, his lover. They were in Paris. Then she was in the war as a war photographer and also working for British Vogue. So she had this incredible life. And she was also just such an amazing sort of collector of people. And you can see from her work as a photographer that she, later in her kind of latter years back in Britain, she married Roland Penrose, who's a really interesting British surrealist who founded the ICA here in London, that their home was just a place for creativity.
And incredible, this person who, was one of the first photographers to go into Bergen-Belsen, real war zone photojournalist. And then in her later life, she becomes obsessed with cooking and recipes and that human side after everything she has seen and documented. This home they create and this sense of home and her love of food. I found in The Last Room just really touching.
I mean, really. And also surreal, the way she sees food. And there's one piece that I clipped, was a piece that she did with British Vogue, which is about hosting and getting your guests to work and help you. But it was almost a satire on being a kind of sort of demanding host. And she had sort of Henry Moore sort of, doing something, and, Leonora Carrington sort of like peeling onions or something. But it was very much in this incredible, you could see the lineage going back to Man Ray. Everything that she did had this beauty and this abstraction and this amazing sensibility. But it was also very obvious to me that because of that, she was an artist in a war zone, seeing some of the most terrible things that ever happened in humanity. So in a way, she just was so incredibly traumatized by that. She packed all her negatives into the attic, and no one ever saw them until she died.
She
in the
even
70s.
said that they were destroyed when in fact they weren't. But for some, it was probably just affected her so viscerally that she had to almost obliterate it in her own mind. But she couldn't quite destroy them. Anyway,
we've been talking about nothing but Lee Miller upstairs on the editorial floor, so these are just some of our reflections, but I definitely recommend to see it.
But people can go and see the film Lee with Kate Winslet, which I highly recommend. I think it was superb, and it gives you a great sense of the person who she was.
I recommend it too, and Marcella, if you haven't seen it, you should just...
I have to.
It's really remarkable. I mean, it didn't get the greatest reviews, actually, and I think... Perhaps if you don't know anything about Lee Miller's life, it's very much of a war film. But I think it was an amazing piece, and you would love it, Marcella, and also the show when you're over in London next.
Yeah, I have to see it, absolutely.
Our first guest this month is the British-Malaysian artist Mandy El-Sayegh. Known for transforming entire rooms into richly layered, deeply textured installations, her work brings together fragments of newsprint, advertising, maps, banknotes, and her father's Arabic calligraphy, creating environments that feel both personal and political.
This November, Mandy opened her largest exhibition yet at the Boijmans van Beuningen Museum in Rotterdam with an installation focused on the body. And she's also just launched a new mural at the showroom in West London, asking what art can do in moments of extreme military aggression.
Earlier, I caught up with Mandy here in our studio to talk about her influences, her approach to material, and the layered political, personal and bodily narratives that run through her work. Let's have a listen.
As a child, I wouldn't say I grew up with art. So it was just like fragments of things that were kind of fed into my visual landscape. So my mum was a midwife, and she'd come home from work and bring back like these women's magazines from the hospital that you kind of have in the communal space. And I like cut out all the eyes and stuff. There's a medical language in my family because my dad has like kidney disease. So I guess those are the kind of influences for my syntax. But when I'm approaching each show, the influences come out of the conversation I'm having with like the curator or the site or the place, and I'm kind of like do this kind of research process. So the Gertrude actually didn't come from me. That was like through a conversation I had with the curator, Sarah Raza, who's the author of Punk Orientalism. And that also matches my way of thinking, which is like this kind of punk methodology of DIY and fragments built up in a different way. So that was her starting point she brought for me, and I would research that. Every single project starts from that kernel of research. So in Heidelberg, which is going to be the next show, I'm looking at the Prinzhorn collection, which is housed in that region. So it'd be very site-specific, but there's a kind of thread that's always running through, which is, you know, the body, like marginalized groups, and like this kind of fragmentation in the broader sense. So that can be like mentally or aesthetically, politically and historically.
It would be good to start actually with a very local project and a very powerful piece of work that's close to your heart. But at Storefront, not far from here in the studio, we're on Chiltern Street, but it's really a stone's throw. Give me a sense of that installation. And it's amazing to hear that you worked with a lot of the kind of local community, taking kind of typography from around, really responding to the sense of Edgware Road, this incredibly unique palette that we have in this corner of London. But also it's a piece that responds to your father's heritage, to Palestine and Gaza and what's happening there at the moment.
Yeah, I felt really lucky to be invited to do something that was so resonant to me. And I grew up around that area, as you mentioned, so I think I wanted to see parts of myself in wherever I'm going, so I can like make a home for myself, let's say. And I thought about, it's a year-long commission, and it's like the facade of the gallery. So it's like a structure of a grid that we've installed, and then these kind of sculptural elements that are put on, and the fragments of slogans and things I've seen in protests recently, and also like old poetry and different wide range of poets. And then on the other side, there's two faces of it. There's like a manifesto that I made in that same cut-up method. So going back to this kind of sense of fragmentation and like this rebuilding and cut-up method, it's like really speaking to that methodology, and working with the local women in the area applies like culturally, right? So I would bring in these poetry books, and they could like scan them and find things or like phrases that they could resonate with, and then they would kind of like write them in their language, in Arabic in this case. And even the kind of like translation, that you get something lost. So each time you kind of inscribe something, you have a loss, but that fracturing speaks to the subject in a way, and the specificity of each person, how they read and see things, and then reassembling that on the facade after, and just kind of like embracing that kind of, brokenness, which I think all kind of artists do in a way. Mahmoud Darwish, who features very heavily there, he like spoke multiple languages, and that's what speaks to the universality of his work. So it can be approached from all different ways. And I think that, I don't know what's called, you can like read in between the lines, even though you don't have the same tongue, but you can get little bridges. And so those bridges become the work, and that bridging, and it becomes like a kind of meshwork of a kind of trying to find a ground where you can be seen and communicate.
I mean, it's amazing because in your work, if you can imagine for a listener, you know, you're walking into this space, but it's very much like a sort of, the entire room becomes part of the piece, and there's a sense that there's a sort of second skin. You're using your materials and creating, there's a very bodily sense to it and a sense of intent. How does the body come into your practice, and how do you consider your materials to be like almost limbs in this kind of wonderful sense of immersion people are getting?
I think we all have bodies, right? So it's about trying to find a kind of universal understood language because I always felt like I wasn't fully kind of interpolated into this kind of culture, let's say. So how could I create something that you didn't have to have a back, you don't need to read about my work, you can just go and see a show and feel like it's resonant. I think this kind of urgency of the body and the kind of relationality of like, you know, having a rubberized floor kind of makes your body part of that installation as well. The smells, the sounds, the kind of the textures of things, it shows this kind of living and dying together in the same space. And the poetry becomes part of that literalness, which speaks back to the showroom thing, because a lot of it is concrete poetry. A lot of it says on one part of the manifesto that all poets in Gaza are concrete. That is like they're literally being buried under the rubble. And also the way we speak and the language used has that aspect of it, because it is the thing, but it's also poetry at the same time. It's kind of a painful embrace of the two.
I mean, it's fascinating as a journalist to look at your work and see how you're using print, how you're responding to information, kind of disrupting it, building and dismantling narratives, actually. And it's so striking to see the Financial Times incorporated into your work. But I wondered, how do you respond to information, you know, to text? How do you decide upon these pieces of text, be it poetry, be it political commentary? Give us a sense of how that process works.
Yeah, I think when you enter a gallery, you kind of want to know like what the kind of rationale of the artist is. And I kind of want to make that more and more complicated, because there's almost an overwhelming amount of material that you cannot find any kind of singular linear kind of narrative. It's like this too muchness, which is characteristic of how we experience culture today, is part of it. So it's like my studio is just a hoarded cave of stuff, and it's almost like I can't see. So it's not even like I select. I kind of loosely know the kind of feeling I want to go for, and so the kind of issues I pick are arbitrary. It's whatever's lying around. It could be the most recent issue. For example, we're talking about the Financial Times, but that was kind of initially chosen because of what it represents, which is like this constructed notion of economic objectivity. But, you know, we know everything's a construction. And then if you put that alongside with other things that I've hoarded and put into an installation, your reading, it becomes super specific. So each person will read something differently, like this impossibility of finding one narrative, but you kind of get a feeling through the materials and the collected objects in the room with sound. And
are you making political points? Because it's interesting, you know, it feels like your work responds and is in some way in that Dada tradition of kind of collage and disruption, and in those cases often there was a very political expression. I wondered if you are using text to, you know, in a very with intent, or is it much more chaotic and much more, as you say, you know, without thought?
I don't think that Dada has had a specific political, like, I guess collectively and retrospectively you can say that, but I think they wanted to disrupt, as you said, as a methodology. And in that way, I definitely do relate. But there's no specific, I don't think, there are some artist activists, but I'm not an activist. So it's mainly kind of like just holding a mirror with my specific subjectivity and laying it all there.
Now let's talk about Rotterdam, because you mentioned Heidelberg is next, but it's very interesting, your installation coming up. And I wondered how you responded to the city of Rotterdam, to that commission, to the space, the history. It's a very interesting place. Can you give us an insight into the work that people can see in the coming weeks?
So yeah, I'm really lucky to be the first in a lineup of solo shows in the Depot. And it's one of the most beautiful museums in the world because you can see everything. And I think a lot of other museums are trying to buy its style by showing like the collections and having it really transparent. But you can go and visit the collections and they're behind these kind of vitrines, and all the artworks are kind of suspended in space. And then like the collection is switched over quite frequently. So it kind of shows this kind of museological transparency, which is really nice. And I guess like I don't I didn't respond to the city. Again, it's my spectrum thinking. When I go to a new city, I don't look up and see the buildings. I just look on the floor and see like what pamphlets have been strewn around. I think they were doing voting at the time, so I collected those. So I'm very detail oriented. So I would go very specifically into the collection and start from that point of research. And I thought about what the collection means. I even thought about calling the show The Collection, because the collected archive is really important. Decolonial work and the burning of archives and the oppressing of archives. So thinking like about the sexiest, most recognizable thing that Boymans has. And I found a Warhol that was gorgeous, silver ground. It's called Bela Lugosi's Kiss, and it's a woman being bitten by a vampire and printed like 7 times across a big stretcher. And I thought, like, you know, when you see a Warhol, it's instantly recognizable. And this power of recognition over time just holds strong, and how I can relate to that and kind of like usher in other source material to sit with that power. So there's this, now it's like taken down image of a body that is killed in current conflict in Palestine. And I looked through the older collections of Boymans, old masters collections, as well as the Warhol. And there's this Lilio old master drawing of like a study for Christ. You know, those studies we're so familiar with, of like Christ with his neck kind of like slumped, and parts of his torso, and a grid laid on top. So those things became the seat of the show, and just building up through that, using that as like the kind of kernel to build up like associative links through the strata of painting being like the dominant language. I call it the Queen's English, and then using that to kind of usher in these historical fragments that have been obfuscated, because we're going through the biggest digital censorship like ever with this conflict. And so how art is the longest game, and looking at painting is something that is such a privilege, but also such an important part of culture, and internalizing that, how I can like weave things in.
Yeah, I was in the Tate Britain yesterday, but there are so many ghosts as well.
Yeah, ghosts, that's the word.
But it's interesting that you respond to that as an artist, and I think people are feeling that they want to have that sensorial connection. I think people are going to galleries with their eyes and ears, but also with their intuition more and more. Do you think that is a challenge for you as an artist? Is it something that you kind of relish, in a sense that people are more responsive, more nuanced?
Yeah, I mean that's the goal. So like in a way, I'm like very, very old school. It's like I want to be justified from just painting alone. But I think things have gotten so difficult culturally that we have to tell our stories, or are coerced to tell our stories in order to have visibility. And I'm always fighting that push-pull of like wanting to do that, but also wanting the right to just be a painter and just feeling something. But there's so much groundwork to be done. I have friends that, you know, are working in institutions. They have to do the kind of groundwork socially and rebuild structures of working together. And it's the same as a painter. Like, I can't just go into the lineage of Rothko or Richter as a given. I have to like be critiquing every part that has led to that being so revered and held up. I need to like look at each stage of its making and think about that too. But at the same time, this place that I want to get towards, which is a sensorial feeling, is also a way to get those ideas in. So yeah, that is a challenge, and I think it's really important to not just to be able to have it sound good when you're talking about it. You really have to feel it.
The artist Mandy El-Sayegh there, speaking to me a little earlier. Thank you for joining us on Confet Corner. Next, we head to Helsinki, where a women-focused community called Charlie Goes To has been drawing crowds and attention.
Our correspondent Petri Burtsov went along to the latest edition of the event series to find out what the platform offers, who attends, and why participants such as the former Prime Minister, Sanna Marin, believes it fills a gap that still exists, even in a country often labelled one of the world's most gender equal.
A few hundred women from the capital and beyond have gathered at the Helsinki Dance House for the latest Charlie Goes To event. The crowd is a curious mix of business executives, political leaders such as the former Prime Minister Sanna Marin, as well as celebrities including models, actresses and artists. Since its inception, Charlie Goes To has become one of the most coveted and talked about female-focused events in Finland, with tickets selling out despite the price tag of several hundreds of euros. The idea comes from the actress and entrepreneur Mia Ehrnrooth, who founded the platform after noticing a recurring pattern in her own career and in conversations around her.
By starting to put women in the center of the story and also providing stories for women that relate and give them information, inspiration, and the outcome of that which was a fantastic company, a business, because it turns out that women are great consumers and women want to hear stories about women who look and sound like them and who are living similar lives to them. So that was basically how Charlie came to be, and it was about finding alternative paths to have great careers and still living a wonderful life.
It was important from the get-go that Charlie Goes To won't be just another corporate-style women's networking event. The goal is that the participants have fun too.
When you combine information and entertainment. So, you can be ambitious, but you sure should have fun while doing it. And this is something that I think is the core element to all of these women who come to this event. And then also to find women who work in diverse professions, because whether you're starting a company or you're looking to build a corporate career, it helps to understand the marketing, the communication, the legal part, maybe politics. And then when you start having a network of women who are ministers, they are lawyers, they are PR people, or they are journalists, you have a really good community to turn to and give you the best advice.
I think that's fantastic, and you're such a great example in regards to that.
But what goes on at these events? When Confect attends, there are talks by the likes of Prime Minister Marin, but also business leaders such as the Marimekko CEO Tiina Alahuhta-Kasko, plus visiting speakers such as the Los Angeles-based talent management superstar Alice Hampton.
First, we start with great vibes. So we always have good music, good food, and a lot of amazing ladies. But the event structure is so that we have panel discussions and interviews, but also I think what is the core to this and what is the most important thing to reach success and your career ambitions is that you have access to people. So that's what we are doing. We are creating access to people. And in this day today, it's so difficult to reach out to someone by email or getting a hold of them by phone because there's so much information. Everybody's just flooded. So you need to meet them face to face. So that's what we're providing, and access to people you might not in a regular setting maybe get access to. And then also in our panel discussions and in our interviews, we are applying Chatham House rules in the sense that we want to make the conversation honest. Because when we know what really goes on, it's not just the Instagram high reels or the LinkedIn hypes, then you get the solutions and to the core good stuff that you need to know in order to get your next steps.
The former Prime Minister Marin is a regular at the Charlie Goes To events. She says the event's cross-sector approach is what makes it stand out.
What makes it different is that it brings together women from quite different kind of backgrounds and different kind of fields, but still on discussing the same themes that combines these different backgrounds to discuss on the matters that we can still everybody share and feel, like how to combine family and working life, or how to have that confidence in your profession and in your working environment, and what can you learn from others to boost your own career and your own ambitions. And I think this is very valuable for women to have this kind of togetherness and sisterhood that you can feel here.
Finland is often portrayed as a model of gender equality, but Marin argues that work is far from complete, and that events focused on women remain necessary.
Well, if we look the world everywhere, we can all agree, and I hope we can agree, that the world isn't equal, not anywhere, not in the Nordics where we have maybe taking more steps towards equality, but still even in the Nordics we don't find us in that equal position. So I think it is still very important to also have that kind of women supporting women way of thinking. Because women doesn't yet, unfortunately, have 50% of the world power and resources that we are entitled as a 50% of the world population. So I think it is very important to support women, and I'm dedicating my life to supporting women. And of course, if we support women, it doesn't mean that we want to exclude different views or men from the discussion. But I still find that it is important to have those places where women can relate, have discussions, and also have the perspective of other women, because they are all struggling with the same issues and they might feel quite alone. And then when you meet other women with the same takes, then you can feel also that you're not alone, you're a part of a group, and together we can make things happen.
Charlie Goes Too began as a small invitation-only gathering. Today, it holds both large annual conferences and smaller, more intimate sessions throughout the year. For attendees, the appeal seems to be in its combination of access, informality, and candor. But the goal is broader, to seed future companies, leaders, and networks. But for now, in a crowded theater of the dance house, the focus remains simple: bringing women together and giving them the space to speak openly and to learn from each other. For Confect Corner in Helsinki, I'm Petri Burtsov.
Writer Solvej Balle achieved literary stardom in her native Denmark with the publication of her 1993 novel, Ifølge Lotten. Today, that fame has spread with the English language translation of her series On the Calculation of Volume, the first volume of which was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize 2025 earlier this year.
Well, the books have been decades in the making. The narrative revolves around a single day. The story follows an antiquarian bookkeeper named Tara Selter, who is stuck reliving the 18th of November. You might think that re-experiencing the same day is a bit dull, but in Balle's hands is always compelling.
Confect's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs sat down with Balle to discuss her unique time loop narrative, whether the novel is a love story, and why she picked the 18th of November.
In the beginning, I just thought this is just a novel. I mean, it's a very vague term, isn't it? But I knew it wasn't a short story. I thought of it as just one book. So kind of a standard-sized novel, which is probably smaller in Denmark than in UK. But I realized after I'd started writing, I mean, I did write bits and pieces in the beginning, but not kind of large stretches, and nothing that ended up, as a whole stretch in the book. It was more kind of fragments. But after I had started, I think that was around 1999 or something, or 2000, I had actually started writing the bit that ends up being, book one. I could see that after kind of what is now book two, I could see, oh no, this is actually larger than just the book. So I thought of, a 2-volume book. And later on, I realized maybe there's 4. And I realized the 7-book thing when I started to see it was kind of forming in this is difficult to explain though, because it's such vague, and you have to, I think it was, I could see that the bits were very different. One had a certain theme or a certain atmosphere to it, and then the next one was rather different. So, and I think I realized that around 2000 and maybe 17.
There's something kind of ironic about the time that you've spent in this world, and that that's all happened on a single day.
And it's really weird.
Yeah. as you write the books, does it change your experience of time in the real world? Is it, I wonder how that feels.
I mean, especially kind of the experience of what it is, what aging is, what it is, to see time in, I mean, of course, I've got, almost 40 years older over those years. And it was really fun because when I started to realize, I knew rather early that Tara Seltzer was going to go through she was going to be there for a long time and she was going to age. And I think I might be spoiling a little bit now, but it is kind of clear on the way that she's aging along the road. But when in the beginning I was going to kind of try to understand what it is to age, and it's actually rather hard when you're, I don't know, I think I was, maybe 25, 26, a little bit more over those years. But later on I realized that when I was starting to see signs of aging, that oh my goodness, this is just research. So when other people complained about, I mean, in the beginning, I started to kind of interview people. I mean, so what is it like? What is the first thing you can't hear when you start, feeling that your hearing doesn't work so well and stuff. And I felt it was research getting older. So that was quite good fun, but that was I had to understand what it is to have a body that is aging in order to write the story. Mm-hmm. So I interviewed a lot of elderly ladies. And later on I became one.
And we talked a little bit about the time that it's existed as an idea in your mind, and then also as a writing project, and now as books. And as I mentioned earlier, I felt that so much of it seems to be about the art of noticing and the things we notice. And when Tara Seltzer is forced to, for her life to change in this way, she notices all these things and she becomes obsessed about certain things. And I think it's interesting that it's been such a big project because we now live in this super fast-moving digital world. Obviously, that's existed for a long time, but I felt that maybe that art of noticing is something which maybe we're getting further away from when you see people, everyone being on their phones the whole time and not looking around them. And I wonder if that's something that you thought is being lost, or you've kind of seen it change, our relationship with the world around us change over the course of your time of writing these books.
Yes, of course, because, there was no such thing as, in the very beginning, I think we had, you could kind of get a credit card, but that was about it. There was no internet or anything when I started. So it was a different world. But I think somehow that the way the world has developed had helped me out of some of the problems that might arise in the book. So that's just a practical thing. But also, I think we have got several levels of attention, I think, because, this fast-moving, this feeling that we can just get in contact with. Of course, we had telephones before, but, you can be part of things in a totally different way now. It's very hard not to move into 100 directions now because there's so many elements in it. But I don't think that when we are aware of the world today, that we are less aware. So this attention to simple experiences, I think we still have. Wouldn't you think so? When you are when you're in a situation where you feel very kind of aware of what's around you, wouldn't you say that you would be equally aware?
Okay, so some simpler questions, I guess, just to finish. Do you enjoy writing it, and do you have any particular kind of rituals or routines around that?
I do enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I have difficulties when I have times where I can see this is not going to work, I've had a lot of that, and I can't continue until I've kind of solved some of these problems, and it's been there in every book, like something where I think, no, this is horrible, this is, ill-written and a bad idea. And of course, one doesn't enjoy that feeling so much. But it's as if whenever I haven't kind of been able to find the solutions, I have such a balance. Sometimes the challenges or, the questions or the philosophy of it can be, so interesting for me that it overshadows the fact that I feel incapable of doing it, or, I feel when I look at what I've written, my goodness, this is never going to be a book, So somehow there's been a balance all the time about some questions I enjoy engaging in, and then the joy of actually writing, when it actually flows, when there is an element where you say, oh, I didn't expect this. This was fun. Or when you sometimes actually sit giggling about a really stupid idea. Some of them, of course, are taken out again, but some of them stay. Because there are so many elements in it. It's as if there is always some parts of it I enjoy. Mm-hmm. And some parts of it I really struggle with. And because I'm self-publishing as well, I mean, it has also been so enjoyable. I remember being a bit shocked by, when I realized that there were 7 books, but then it was overshadowed by the joy of going to the graphics person. It's actually a guy living in the UK. He lives in Diss in Norfolk.
Yeah, I know Diss.
And then trying to discuss all these things. How do we want to do it? What colors should it have? So then the horror of realizing that there's 7 books is somehow balanced up against the joy of seeing the 7 covers. Mm-hmm. Realizing, I have to put something in those covers, but all I have is some unfinished stuff. So the short answer is, yes, I have really enjoyed parts of it all the time, but not everything of it all the time, because it has been a real struggle. Mm. And sometimes I've just thought, my goodness, who would do something like this? Or, when every time I've finished one of them, I'm so happy I'm not going to be a writer when I grow up.
Why did you choose the 18th of November? Was there any rhyme or reason?
In the beginning, it was the 17th of October. I thought that for a long, long, long time. Maybe even, but I'm not sure about that. I would have to check that. But maybe even after I properly started to write it in 25 years ago. So for a long time, it was the 17th of October. And yesterday, I was sitting near the sea and looking at a very, very clear October sky. And, I've had this feeling so many times, October is too crisp, it's too sharp and clear. I needed something more blurred or more, with a chance of having something, in the same way as the loop doesn't go as a machinery or mechanics. There's a discussion between Tara and her dad in book 2 about, how it's not a machinery. So I think there was too much machinery in October. And then when I landed on the 18th of November, I realized it worked much better. Of course, book 2 as well wouldn't work if it was spring or summer, because she needs snow.
The author Solvej Balle there, speaking to Confect's Sophie Monocle a little bit earlier. Gillian, is there a day that you would relive repeatedly?
Oh my goodness, what a question. I suppose if I was a child, it would be Halloween, October 31st, where I could constantly dress up in new costumes and run around with bags getting filled with candy. But that's my childhood fantasy. Fast forward to grown-up me. And you knowing me as you know me, loving tennis, I suppose it would be, can I please request reliving the first day of Wimbledon over and over again and seeing all the top tennis players and all the young emerging stars play the best tennis in the world.
Love it. And really great tennis dresses and outfits, I hope.
Absolutely.
The whites.
And for me as well, I'd be wearing my hats and
the perfect lawn.
Totally. Champagne, strawberries, the whole thing. Marcella, are you drawn to repetition as a theme? For example, do you prefer routine or do you like to shake things up?
Actually, I prefer repetition and routine as you can deep dive and discover subtleties in something. Think about watching a movie several times or reading a book another time. You will discover each time new aspects, don't you?
That is true. It's a different perception. It's always interesting how even like commuting to work is actually very soothing because it's so deeply repetitive, that you just feel kind of like carried by your own instinct, by your own sense of innate, like just knowing. It's quite reassuring.
And there is that attention to detail. I mean, how many times have you walked down the same street and then one day you look up and you notice something, you see on the wall something, a decorative detail. It comes into sharp relief almost the more you've done it.
But I just love surprise, so I'd have to completely disagree with what I just said.
You're allowed.
Because I just feel like I love that sense of the gentle movement. And I mean, luckily for the editor of a seasonal quarterly, I love the shifting seasons. And actually, even in a place like California, I love going there, but I would miss the gentle kind of shifting, the subtle shifting of just all of the things around you. And if I had to repeat one day, it would definitely be kind of late spring, where there's the freshness and there's the blossom and there's the sense of kind of anticipation. But I love that moment because it's a herald. It heralds other sort of lovely things to come. So being stuck in a Groundhog Day kind of 18th of November, which is pretty tough actually.
Yes. Ooh.
Kind of
especially here in London.
Not even Christmassy. I mean, it's quite at least kind of the kind of original.
I hope it's peopled with very colourful
Groundhog
characters.
Day was like actually Christmas. So yeah, I haven't read the book, but I think it's a very interesting psychological challenge. That the idea that humanity, we are kind of wrestling with the idea that we love the sort of people developing, children growing, but that also means that, you know, we are kind of ultimately sort of aging and moving to the inevitable end. But I think that's one of the great beauties of being human. And if you put a pause on it all, it's kind of horrifying. It's a horrifying scenario. So I'd love to read the book, and Sophie's interview really captures that. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Confect Corner. My thanks, as ever, to Julian Tobias here in London and to Marcella Palek in Zurich. Confect Corner is produced and edited by Carlotta Ribello and Steph Chungu. Remember to pick up your copy of the new winter issue of Confect magazine or subscribe by heading to confectmagazine.com. Until next time, from me, Sophie Grove, goodbye and thanks for listening.